the only thing I will, if I need to explain to the board about it, the real difference I see is that in these other programs, we have basically entities holding a large pool of these securities, and we're not questioning whether the state of Illinois or Illinois, what's it called, Metropolitan Fund, whether they themselves are subject to their own individual particular risk. And I think the difficulty with it's the same bond, but the problem was how we were going to be assured that if something happened to the institution, our security in the bond would be valid, and the security interest that we were being granted in the bond in that situation required that we do all the homework to analyze the security interest being granted. Whereas when we're with IPTIP or with Illinois Metropolitan Fund, we're presuming that somebody else is, taking possession of those bonds or adequately securing their interest in them. So it put a higher burden on the village to try and uncover that.
That was the difference.
And I think.
I agree. I mean, we evaluated the cost and time of everybody's participation in getting where we wanted to go in level of comfort, and at 2%, where's the payoff? So it was just easier to pull it than it was to deal with it.
I just wanted to understand that. Thank you. Urban Forest Manager's not here. Engineers report.
We're scheduled to start the roadway maintenance on Hiawatha and Indian Trails next week. Once I confirm for sure with the contractor tomorrow that he's still on schedule, we'll get notices out to all the folks over there, let them know that the construction is coming. I reported to the board at the last meeting that for our Saunders Road rehabilitation, we were targeting the November IDOT letting. Once I got with IDOT, found out that plans had to be into IDOT in late June to make that November letting. Fortunately, the council didn't select the project until early July, so there is no making the November letting, which puts us on then the January letting. It doesn't have any effect on the timing of construction. It all starts in the spring when the plant's open. But it'll be a little bit longer before we know where the costs are on that. Our rain gardens, I'm hopeful that everybody had a chance perhaps to take a look over at the side of the building over here. We're completed all 3 locations with the exception of some restoration work, a little more cleanup work to be done in each one. We have to work on the downspouts out here. But we'll be able, this installation here particularly, we'll be able to monitor it as it grows. Right now there's little plugs and baby plants in there. Hopefully in a few weeks or a month or so, we'll have some real plants to look at out there. And I think they've generally turned out nice. What I'll do is put together, once these grow a little bit, I want to prepare a short white paper. We'll have photos of the other, of all 3 locations, put together a little description of what we've accomplished out here, and try and encourage people to come out and learn from them, do similar work on their own properties. I think the next thing we'll want to do is start thinking through if the village wants to come up with a program to encourage, basically to provide funds for people to do similar work on their own property. I think that's a very good idea. We just need to flesh out the details.
I think that would be helpful for our standing water.
And then the only other thing I had here, and I don't know if Mayor Kaplan or Trustee Chamberlain, you want to touch on the meeting that we had with Lake County today, or want me to walk through it?
You can go ahead. And then maybe I'll add.
By all means. We, Trustee Chamberlain, Mayor Kaplan, DVA Chair Ford, and myself met this morning with Ann Main and Bruce Christensen, who's with the Lake County Division of Transportation. This came about, Trustee Chamberlain had asked me a couple times what the village might do to move forward with the planning of the Deerfield Road bike path between the 2 county segments. They've completed the eastern segment over at the tollway, and they have design approval at least for the western segment from the Des Plaines River Trail to Thorn Meadow Road. So that leaves about just under a mile and a half in the middle that the village, of course, has always considered something that we'd like to see get built. It's on our master bike plan. I suggested meeting with Lake County DOT, and particularly Bruce Christensen, because number one, Deerfield Road is a county highway, but more importantly, Christensen is the guy who stands astride virtually every funding source that's available in Lake County. He heads up the surface transportation program. He is the grant coordinator with the DNR. Basically, if you're going to get funding for something like this, well, sooner or later you're going to coordinate it through Bruce Christensen, so he was the guy to meet. Two significant points that came out of this meeting. I think the first one was we had wondered how much we need to think in terms of accommodating a future widening on Deerfield Road as we plan this path. And Bruce, his immediate response was that Lake County has no near-term plans for the widening of Deerfield Road, and the planning for this path should not concern itself with what the future configuration of Deerfield Road might be. And then the suggestion for moving forward was, in order to position ourselves for the most funding, particularly federal funds. A lot of the state and local funds oftentimes are 50-50 matching grants or even less. The DNR grant tops out at $200,000. The feds are really where you're going to find the real funding for a project of this magnitude. In order to qualify for federal funding, a project like this always starts out with what's called a Phase 1 study, which examines the project in its entirety and to a pretty high level of detail as far as what the design standards be, what right-of-way requirements there may be, floodplain environmental impacts. You really look at the entire picture. And that was the suggestion from the county, was to proceed with a Phase 1 study on this thing, so that we can put together the complete project. We can actually have a good handle on what the anticipated construction costs would be, and really and move this thing forward. And again, he mentioned that the opportunities arise. The stimulus funding was one example where it's always, it would have been to the village's advantage to have a design already in hand, and perhaps it could have got moved forward. So perhaps the engineer is biased in suggesting that we proceed with engineering, but that was the suggestion that we got from the Lake County DOT. So what we determined at the meeting was I would put together a proposal inclusive of anticipated engineering fees to do this study, to have that for consideration at the next meeting.
And the only other thing I have to add to that is that once that's done, then we can talk to the residents and say, okay, these are the costs we're looking at. How interested are you at this point?
What was Christensen's comment relative to the widening of Deerfield Road?
This took us as a surprise.
If I remember particularly what he said, is that there are no near-term plans for the widening of Deerfield.
I guess we need a definition of near term. But this was the county plan that gave us the information that Deerfield Road was scheduled for widening.
Yeah.
And the initial plan was for 2010 or before.
2020.
2020, I'm sorry. And subsequently, they moved it back.
Back.
And now he's saying.
Back is which direction?
No, forward. Forward.
Now it's back.
Would it make sense just to send a letter over to him asking for some sort of clarification?
I don't think he knows, but here's the whole concept. I was concerned about putting a bike path in and then having it, spending millions of dollars on something and having it picked up because they're putting down, widening the road. He said, don't even think about it, just go ahead and put your bike path. So he's going to say, go ahead and spend a lot of money on a bike path because don't worry about it. The road isn't going to be widened so fast. That makes sense.
They were talking 20 years ago about widening. Remember, we